State Capture Commission is taking place. It's adjourned for the day, but somebody who's been watching the proceedings during the course of the day for us is our reporter Mzwandile Mbeje, who joins us now. Mzwa, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Day two, after yesterday's revelations, it started again with a declaration by the President about his safety.
Well, I did not get you clearly. Perhaps, Peter, if you can repeat the question with the declaration of?
I was just saying that yesterday there were quite some revelations made in the commission by President Zuma, and then this morning he started again with some startling news.
Oh yes, sorry, I missed that completely. Indeed, Peter, I mean, before he could start, he actually raised his hand to say there's something he wants to say to the judge who is presiding over here. He basically said, Peter, this morning he then was informed by his personal assistant from the Luthuli House side to say she was phoned by unknown people last night telling her that they would kill her, and she must also tell Zuma that they would also kill Zuma and kill the entire Zuma family and the people around Zuma. And that happens, Peter, after threats that had been made to his legal representative, Moses Kakane, that happened, I think, over a week ago. So it was quite startling. I mean, the judge basically said so he would not want anyone to be put in that kind of a situation. As much as the commission would want to help in this instance, perhaps it presents a bit of a difficulty for the former president, because he already has the security detail, and the security detail that he has is much more than what the commission can afford. But it would appear that perhaps the issue would be around his family and those around him. But of course, the commission then instructed the legal team to say, the judge saying, maybe the discussion should be heard between the Zuma people and the commission itself to see what best can be done so that no one feels threatened and that everyone is able to come to the commission. I think, Peter, the judge went as far as to say, I don't want a situation where someone has to appear but can't because they're fearing for their lives.
All right, and even before we get into the substance of what was said and perhaps not said today, it does seem that it's been a bit of a sparring match between the evidence leaders for the commission and Mr. Zuma's legal team. Oh yes, and the judge had really had to take charge of the situation, because you could see that at some point there was going to be a stalemate. We were not going to move anywhere. And then when we adjourned, then at some point, the adjournment, Peter, was necessitated to say they needed to look at these issues really that keep coming up, that are crippling the kind of discussions that were happening. So basically what was happening was that the legal team of the former president was objecting to the nature of the questioning that was being conducted by Advocate Paul Pretorius. They were basically saying it is tantamount to cross-examination, and it was opposed to what they had been made to believe, to say this session that Mr. Zuma is undertaking here is more clarity-seeking. So I think that was their bone of contention in the main. But of course, the commission stuck to its guns, saying, no, this is part of seeking clarity, because there were people who came here and mentioned the name of the former president, mentioned some of the things that were said to have been done. So as a result, they were duty-bound to follow that up so that they could be able to clear everything. Remember, everything that is said here must be very, very clear, so that when the chairperson who is presiding over here is making the final recommendation, is really not confused. I think one of the issues, Peter, the team of Mr. Zuma was concerned about was that the kind of interest in this commission, not necessarily the interest from people just wanting to hear what happened, but there's interest from law enforcement agencies. So if there are things really that are emanating from here that could be issues of criminality, so they are duty bound to act on them. So they did not want to take a chance. I think that's why they kept on pushing. But of course, they had that meeting in the chambers with the judge, where it was agreed that they would take it into account the fact that this is not a court of law, but it's a commission. But of course, the commission itself must also be able to continue with its work. And then the team will sit and watch only in the extreme incidences where they feel perhaps the legal team of the commission is going overboard. But also the judge would make sure that fairness is achieved on all sides. So that's why we're able to continue as we have just adjourned now, Peter.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the substance of the things that were said. They were testing the statements made by Themba Maseko, Fakey Mentor, and they began looking at Barbara Hogan. And through it all, one gets a sense that President Zuma, former President Zuma, had nothing to do with most of the allegations that were put against him or implicated him.
Well, it's been very difficult if you compare today's session to yesterday's session, Peter. I think we haven't really been able to get as much insofar as what we had hoped. Because most of the things that are being put to him, he essentially says he does not know them. They were not part of, they're not within his authority, so to speak. And it's been very, very difficult. I mean, we went through the issues that relate to Themba Maseko. Sometimes he would simply say, but those matters relate to the minister and the DG. So how do I come in there? So I would have no knowledge of those things. It's really been very, very difficult. So not much really has transpired in terms of the substance that we're looking for. But perhaps there is something that I would say is new that came out. Remember, Peter, when Miss Mentor made that statement to say she had been offered a ministerial post by the Guptas, the presidency issued a statement then to say the president had absolutely no recollection of who Miss Mentor was. But today, the president said, the former president said, well, I actually do know who Miss Mentor was. The reason why that statement was issued then, he says he couldn't remember who Fakey Mentor was until he saw the picture, then said, oh, well, I actually do know this person. So the issue of whether the former president knew Mentor was somehow clarified today. I mean, when the statement then said he didn't know her, so today he said he actually does know who Fakey Mentor is. So the question was perhaps at the time, according to the former president, so he had not given himself enough time to perhaps, let's say, check the pictures immediately after those statements had been made.
All right, so speaking about Fakey Mentor, but what we do now know is that there are two different versions. Yesterday, a lot of it was, I don't remember, I don't have recollection, so he didn't either deny or refute some of these things. But today, he said, I did not walk Fakey Mentor to the car. I did not have this word with her to calm her down after the meeting with the Guptas. So that's a definite position that he's taken. And so now we have two versions of this event.
Well, no, I think this is the situation, Peter. I think before they could even get into the evidence of Ms. Mento, I think there was that issue right at the beginning to say there are still outstanding issues with regards to that testimony. Remember, the Commission hasn't been able to establish the veracity of her traveling from Cape Town to Johannesburg because those details that were provided then by Parliament, by SAA and by other agencies were not able to prove if she indeed traveled. But because the final decision has not been made as to whether those issues or that statement was correct or not, so the Commission had to go into it. But it would appear that anything and everything that Fikile Mento said, so the former president denies it or simply doesn't know anything about it.
All right, and then of course Themba Maseko, his sacking and his movement, again he says this is beyond the bounds of my authority, this isn't my job. Ministers talk to each other and cabinet then gets informed about what they decided. Again, distancing himself from these issues, and he didn't remember why Themba Maseko was moved.
Oh yes, one of the things he spoke about was that there was a time where there was the shifting of the ministers. That's how he put it. The shifting of the ministers. Sometimes you take this minister to this department, or this DG to this department. So basically, he says it could have fallen within that period where there was that shifting of the DGs. So as a result, he said he would not be able to recollect exactly why he was shifted, that is Themba Maseko. And of course, he says it would really be the job of the ministers to really delve into that issue, because the DGs work with the ministers, well, except the DG in the presidency who will be running the issues of day-to-day office and consulting more with the president. So he says, as far as he is concerned, I mean, he wouldn't jump at the minister because he would not even know how the DG works. So basically, the stance that he has taken on this matter is he has no idea how some of those decisions were made insofar as deciding to move Themba Maseko from GCIS. But as you say, Peter, we will have to wait for more testimony from more other individuals to be able really to understand what is it that transpired that finally led to this phenomenon called state capture.
All right. So what did you make of the former president's demeanor today? I thought I sensed that today he was a little bit more tense at times than he was yesterday.
Well, today, maybe it's because yesterday it was more him talking. Today it was different. It was questions being put to him. I don't know whether the issues that arose, that of threats to his life and family, may have rattled him a bit. But of course, he was a bit withdrawn, not really that kind of assertiveness that we saw yesterday. And as you know, most of the answers was basically, I don't know. So I had no idea that happened. So it was one of those issues really that we didn't get much. And remember, Peter, we still have, I think, is it 5 or 6 more people that he still needs to be quizzed on. Ramatlodi, it's already a common cause what is said on former Minister Ramatlodi, that he was a spy. So there are issues that he had raised that he's still going to be quizzed on. So when we went for adjournment, we were touching on the issue of Barbara Hogan, who was the former Public Enterprises Minister. So when we resume tomorrow morning at 10, that's where we'll take it up. And then after finishing, I guess we'll get into other people that have mentioned his name And judging by what has been happening so far, Peter, I don't think there'll be much.
All right. And who else came to support him today? We saw the Secretary General of the ANC and also his son, Duduzane, I think, in the background.
Oh, yes. The people who were here yesterday, some of them were here. Of course, the most notable today was the Secretary General, who we also had the opportunity to speak to during lunch. But another interesting addition, Peter, today, we've just seen former Minister of Home Affairs, Public Enterprises Minister, Finance Minister, all in one, Malusi Kigaba. He is also here. Of course, we did try to seek a word from him. He flatly refused, but he is one of the people who have come to support him, and many others really that came yesterday as well. But Des van Rooyen, I saw him, he's here as well. And some of the people, you know, those who call themselves RET champions, so they are here. So we'll see if they'll be here throughout the week, because this session is set for the whole week. And then on Friday, in terms of the arrangements, we may see again, Peter, the crowds. Remember, they had been given permission to gather yesterday and Friday. So if he stays here until Friday, I think Friday will be a bit more hectic. And he did promise them yesterday to say he's still on the stand now. He doesn't want to say much. But once he is done on Friday, he probably will be at liberty to say more. But this is perhaps what I should also add. Even if he completes the evidence today, I think the Commission has indicated that they may still need him, because even in some of the parastatals, his name has cropped up now and again. So you are still likely to see him perhaps in future after finishing this week, and it's possible that before the Commission wraps up its work, he will also be able to be here. And of course, we know that the ANC is still to come, and the leader of the ANC, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is also at some point expected to come to the Commission. Peter?
All right, Mzwandile, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much indeed. No doubt we'll be chatting to you again a little bit later on our program, The Full View. Thanks so much indeed, Mzwandile. That was Mzwandile Mbeje, our reporter there, who's been covering the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. Today was day 2.